Hey there, Sniperz227 here, back with another tutorial. This tutorial is just going to follow up on the previous tutorial about our new object system and how to draw things dynamically now, and our VBO tutorial. So in here, to draw something, I'm going to focus, like I said last tutorial, on teaching you the basics of loading a file format in ASCII 1. I'll be using Blender because I know usually I use 3ds Max, but sorry. Oh god, that was weird, I almost puked. Anyways, back on topic. Yeah, 3ds Max, not everyone can get their hands on it, so I'll use something like Blender that's free. Show you how you could export .ply, FBX, Object, X3D, STL, and DAE, because they're all sort of related, and they're ASCII, so you could read it and find out how to read it, parse it. So I'm going to start with the STL because it's the easiest. Like my image shows, we need to extract this one, and this one, and then we need to make indices for them. Luckily, STL organizes their vertexes and triangles, so when you draw them, they're in the correct order, so that saves us a whole lot of time. So all we have to do is create the indices for each one. So for this one we'd create 0, for this one we'd create 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. So how we're going to do that is we're going to add another function called bool load STL. It's going to take a string that's a file name, so the file name, and then int object. I might have to use, no. Now we're going to go here, void COS, load STL. Oh my god, Visual Studio, stop. Load STL string file name, int object. Wow, my typing is getting bad. So we're going to have if stream, because we're only reading it, we're not writing, so we're going to have if stream STL to handle the file stream, opening and loading files, and then a string called line to sort all the data. We're going to open the file, open it, and file name is going to be directory, and then ios in for input because we're reading it, and then close it. Now we're going to use a while loop and say while stl.eof, which basically means while it's not at the end of the file. So the end of the file would be this line, so while it's not done reading the file, basically in English, plain English, that's what it means. While it's not done reading the file, perform these tasks, which is what we want. And I don't know what you so we can use getLine like I always use, STL and line. What getLine does is it basically goes through every line, so it'll read this line and it'll take all this and store it to our string that's line temporarily for that line until it moves on to the next line, and it's going to keep doing this. So in the while loop right now, it's just going to read this one by one until it gets to the end. But why we want it to do this is we're going to keep doing that, and then when we need it to stop, we'll use an if statement. So we only need it to stop at vertex right now. So once it hits vertex, we're going to perform some operations to extract this data. So we're going to use getLine until then, and then so if line.0, so if the first element in the line is a v, because vertex starts with v and the last one is going to be an x, so instead of typing the entire word out, I could do that. So if the first character of the line is a v and the last character, so vertex has 6 letters, so that'd be the 5th element, equal to x perform the following actions. So I'm going to add actually no, I'll add it here. Actually, no, I'll add it here. Int counter equals -1. So scanf underscore s line.cstr. So while we're using this, line.cstr basically converts the string to a C line. Why we want to do this is because right now line contains all this data. We don't need this, we just need this, this, and this. So we use scanf. So we tell it to go into this line, which is line.cstr. That's why we stopped it, because it's stopping at this line, and then we're gonna just extract that. So to do that, we type in vertex, because irrelevant, and then %f, and %f. So it's gonna extract 3 floats. First float, second float, third float, plain and simple. And then the next parameter, always use an ampersand, and basically you're gonna point it to the variable that you're storing the data in. So we're gonna need 3 of them because we're storing the first float in 1, the second float in 1, the third float. So we're gonna use out.vertex object dot xyz. So the first one, and then we're just gonna copy that. So xyz is an array of 3. I made it an array of 3 because x, y, and z is 3 elements. So this is gonna be the x, this is gonna be the y, and then number 2 is gonna be the z. Now we got that data. So this happens every time we see a vertex line. It's gonna store it, and we want to push it back to our list. So out vertex and then object dot vertices dot push back. The first variable, and then to save time, just copy that entire line and just switch the 0 to 1 and 2. There we go, and now like I said, we need to create the indices, which is why I put counter -1. So for I int I equals 0, I is greater than 3, I plus plus. So counter plus equals 1. So we're going to add 1 each time because counter is now going to be set to 0, which is what we want. Then we're going to push back counter. So we want 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we just keep adding it each time. We're going to push it back each time. And since there's 3 points in a triangle, that's why I did it's greater than 3, because we're only going to do it for each vertex. We only need 3 indices. We need 0, 1, 2. So counter's going to be 0, then it's going to be 1, and then it's going to be 2, and it's going to run out of the loop. And then it's only going to come back when there's another vertex, which at that point it's going to be 3, 4, 5, so on. So we're going to push back counter right now. So out vertex object indices dot push back counter. So we got that done. So that's basically all we need. So you can see this is a pretty easy file format to load. That's all we need to load the vertices and the indices. Now we're done. Oh yeah, I forgot. So remember how I said we can't access this until we push it, use this line to push it back. So we do out.vertex push back and then vertex base, our structure. If you don't know why I use vertex base, is because we're pushing back this. If you look at
hello there.
Video just finished rendering. So we're using this structure, which is why we do vertex base over here. So now we could access the 0, the first element, which is 0 index, without that vertex. And this works because every time you call this, it's going to automatically call this, and then it's going to create another one. So now what we need to do is we need to build our VBOs, which is going to be easy. So all we do is hit build VBOs, and then parameter, put object again. It's automatically going to build it for us, which is convenient, and then we just do object.total plus equals 1, because we want to increment it every single time. So that's how we load it. That's how we render it. So now, to put it up to the test, just gonna go to render and init COS central object system equals null. So COS load STL, and then we're just gonna do untitled dot STL and object total. Oh, should be central OS. Anyways, I want to emphasize one thing. I put it in my init function because if we look in my code, the init function is only called once. It's only called once, and that's when it's when we create the window. This is important because if you put this in your render file, it's gonna load this every single frame. So if I put this in here, it's gonna load it every single frame, and we don't want that because it's gonna take up a lot of our CPU processing power and also memory. So it's gonna constantly be loading it, which we don't need. We only need to load it once, obviously, because data is gonna stay the same. So we need to load it once, so I put it in a function that's only called once. And then over here, I'm just gonna initialize my camera.render, so we can look around at the cube. And now I'm gonna make a for statement, or for loop, sorry, not for statement. So for int I equals 0 if it's greater than object.total I++ central OS. Sorry about that. Lost where it was. So yeah. So basically why we're doing this is, if you recall, object total is always being incremented by 1 at the end. So in this case, if we loaded one STL, also going to change X, but it's a bool. So we want to make sure it's loaded. If it isn't loaded, message box. Or actually, we'll just count it. Count STL load failed. No. So we load 1, so object tote is going to be set to 1. And with that, we see that if we go into render full scene, it takes object. So if we only load one file, that means we've only had out.vertex 0 created, which means we can only render out.vertex 0 created. So I is going to be 0 because this is 1, so it's going to keep loading that. Now this is good for dynamic scenes, so like I said, map editors, if you're loading more than one object, you keep incrementing this. Say this, you have 4 objects, I is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to load all that. So it's used for dynamic purposes, and we'll see it work. Oh, I forgot to actually get the file. So to acquire the STL file, just open up Blender, hit export STL, make sure it's ASCII. It's probably not going to work yet because I don't have the file. Just going to go to Visual Studios projects, tutorial project, untitled.stl, export it, and then load it. Now when I open it, untitled.stl should be there. Shouldn't be binary. Okay. download that. I'm just trying to figure out why it's being stupid and not loading. Well, I just want to see if it even opens a file. I'm just trying to see why that wouldn't work. Alright. See if it gets in this loop. I just want to see why it's not responding properly. So let's see if it even gets here. For text, I'm pretty sure that's 6. I don't get why it wouldn't work. So it gets in the loop, and scanf is where it messes up. And I'm sure it's scanf that's giving me weird waves. There's EnviroFlow. Okay, so it isn't. So it's vertices.pushback. That's being stupid. For some reason. Don't know if it's because I'm tired or what, but. Oh, that's why. Scanf is with 2 S's. Took me a while to pick up. Okay, so that's OpenGL related. Glue init. Where am I supposed to put this? before. If you get this, sometimes, I don't know why glue likes to do this, you have to set this to true, glue in it, before you initialize it, and it works. Okay. Now that we have that working, camera render should work. I'm just gonna translate it to 0, 0, gl translate f 0, 0, 0. Say a lot more errors. So pop matrix. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be after that. Supposed to bind it first. Nope, that's it. Alright. Word of advice, don't code when you're tired. So I'm gonna enable vertex array, not array buffer. There we go. So we do have some distortions. Oh, great. Thank you for screwing my entire tutorial up. GL triangles. That was very strange. You know, I'm gonna try something else. Let me try some debugging. I don't want to stall this video, so give me 2 seconds. Okay, well, so I'm back, and this is really weird, because this is my level editor, and you can see the STL cube is there. And it's basically the exact same code. I just want to check something first, actually. Zero 1 2 0 1 2 0 1 2. I cut dummy because what I'm getting with mine is, and I don't know, I'm sorry for this, I don't know why this always happens when I record. I always get random bugs when I record, but basically C is basically the index, and it goes up to 107 when it's supposed to be 36, which I don't get why. And I'm gonna count it to see what happens here, but worst case scenario, I'll just use my code here. It's basically the exact same thing. As you can see, it's a for loop. I don't know why my computer hits me when I record. This should go to, oh, this one goes to 107 too. Okay, well then. So I'm gonna take that STL. Give me a sec. Calculator. 106 divided by 3 is 35. 107 divided by 3 is 36 times 3 equals 108. Okay, so that's right. But I think the issue is something with the STL file, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to use the exact same STL file in my level editor, which was also weirdly used, or exported, sorry, from Blender. So I'm going to try that and see if that helps. And that's a negative. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pause it again. Okay, I found the problem. So it wasn't my code. You can leave that. It was a VBO's. So what's wrong is for the size, I forgot to add this. So it says GL float because they're GL float values, and this GLU int. This should solve it. And it did. So you could see, my sensitivity is too high, but you could see cube is perfectly formed. Yep. So Sniperz227, and I'm